Hello, welcome and congratulations on your decision to purchase this 2-week Beats practice session workshop. In this episode, I show you how you can make hi-hats more interesting with simple techniques. So to make something from this in context of a track like this to something more like this one. How you can do this, I'll show you, but let's get started. So this is the track and these are the hi-hats. So the hi-hat clip is a pattern of different velocities. In here all 16s, or nearly all 16s, some 32s. And on the end of each bar I have a variation with the velocities. On the first bar this one, and on the second bar this one. So, and the hi-hat itself sounds like that. In context of the track, it sounds like that. Nice, but it quick gets boring. So the hi-hat itself, it's a simple hi-hat. I changed the attack a little bit because the original attack is a little bit too peaky, too needly. So I put it on a slower attack, and I used a chain where I configured a chorus and a reverb in it, and I control the amount of the effect with the mix knob and the gain knob here. So, but this, as I said, this hi-hat clip is a little bit boring over time. Quick boring over time, so I try to use some techniques or tools to make it more interesting, and for that I double this or duplicate this hi-hat with Control D, change to that, and change the name with Control R to processed. So I know this is this one and this is this one. So first of all, I use for the hi-hat, to make it more interesting, in the FX container a flanger. So, and the standard is like this. And for the purpose of this tutorial, I turn up the mix knob completely, so the effect is more audible. So the flanger is going up quite fast, up and down quite fast, so I turn down the LFO speed a little bit, maybe like that. That's okay. And I could change the LFO amount, how much the LFO has an effect on my sound. I can put it on 100%. But that's a little bit too much, so I let it on 20% for this example. Okay, in the whole context it sounds like that. Instead of that here. Already a little bit more interesting. So now to make the hi-hats more to the front, I put in here a compressor. Something like that, for example. And turn down the attacks to just squeeze the transients of the hi-hat to make it a bit more softer. So now there's another way still doing the same with a little bit flanger. That's nice, but I could change the decay as well, because if I change the decay on the hi-hat, it sounds like that. So I could use an LFO to just make it go round and round, but that's again a little bit boring, so I use a Steps Modulator. And the Steps Modulator, I crank up to 64 steps and make a right click in the display, generate, and use a sine wave. This sine wave I turn down to 32 steps, like that. And now I'm modulating the decay a little bit, like that. Nice, but boring as well, because it's always doing the same. So now I want to have a little bit more randomness in here, but a controlled randomness. And for controlled randomness, I use a Steps Modulator, because the Steps Modulator I use here, I put on bipolar, and now I can use this random knob to produce something like a seed, fixed random values, like the seeds and the expressions, or could paint in my own ones, for example. And this will used all the time over and over again on this modulator, because now with this one I change the steps, I offset the steps on here fully. So now when I play the hi-hats, the play cursor of this modulator goes from left to right, and this Steps Modulator is creating or adding or subtracting an offset with the positive values and the negative values. So if I play this now, you see the play cursor jumping around. And to make it even more interesting, I crank up to 64 again, and because this is a very empty space, I draw some things in here so it's not that empty, like that, for example. So now I have a controlled randomness in here, because this pattern keeps repeating and repeating. So the bigger I create or I configure this Steps Modulator, the bigger the pattern is. So if I small it down, the pattern is even smaller and the repetition is more noticeable. You have to count fast. No, but subconsciousness, you notice, okay, there's a pattern. And if there's no pattern, just randomness, it stresses the audience a little bit out. So it's always good to have a repeating pattern, not boring, just a little bit changing in sound and something, but there should always be something that is repeating, because we're always searching for repeating patterns. So, and I could as well change, like here, the frequency of the FM with an LFO, for example. So let that a little bit go up and down. So there's changing as well a little bit, made a bit slower, for example. I use the same technique again with the Steps Modulator on the FM hit. So, and to make the sound even more interesting, I put in between the compressor and the flanger a Bitcrusher, bit 8. And on this Bitcrusher I do the same with my Steps Modulator. I use this Steps Modulator turn it to 64 steps, then right click, generate sine, for example, put it back again, like this maybe. And the Bitcrusher itself sounds like that. So I off everything here, and now the sound should be the same. And if I change this one, I crush my sound. So now I use the Steps Modulator to control this one. And first of all, I search like a sweet spot. What is the lowest sound I want to have? The most crushed sound I want to have. Maybe something like that. And from there on, I turn this up, for example. And now I do the same again. Take a second Steps Modulator for my controlled randomness. And with this second one, come on, I control the steps on here, not this, like this, for example, 32 maybe. I use a lower one, like this one, like a ramp, for example, and the 17 steps, and I go down to 17 again. Come on, 17, like something like that. Okay, now the difference, if I listen now to my track with the original hi-hat and the new one, and you always can control the signal with your mix knob here. But I still let that on maximum. And maybe is there something else I could show? Oops, I could show you in here. If you okay, one thing maybe, if we controlled the hi-hat with this Steps Modulator, the decay. And the decay is always going on this direction. But there's an amount button in here that I could turn on the plus 100% and minus 100%. So if I put that on 0 and use, for example, an additional LFO, for example, or Steps Modulator, what do we need? Maybe we just use an LFO. So it's a little bit more boring, predictable, but that's good. And make it a little bit slow. Bipolar is good. Odd number is good as well. And now I control on this knob this amount, like 1, with this parameter. Now it gets shorter. And even that you can control with this LFO modulator with this amount knob. You could even use the Steps Modulators or LFO or anything to control the mix knob, so you have always changing something in the hi-hats. Like with the width, for example. Compared to the original one, it's nice, and it's repeating and repeating and repeating and boring and boring and boring. And with this one, you have more movement in there. Wait, the wrong knob. Full movement or just a little bit. And you start losing the focus on this chord progression. That's a little bit boring, but the hi-hat is more interesting. So you move the focus to the hi-hat portion on that, and even if you don't know, okay, I only know those 2-3 chords, then I do something with my hi-hats. But yeah, that's all about the making the hi-hats more interesting with some steps, a little bit flanging, bit crushing and everything, and you get out of a nice hi-hat pattern a really nice hi-hat pattern. So that's all. Hope you liked it. But please do not comment, like, or subscribe this channel if you want me to stop producing tutorials. In any other cases, or in any other case, I would like to welcome you again in one of the next videos. Have a nice day, stay healthy, and ciao ciao.